Welcome to Field 302, Study Session 10, Research Ethics and Philosophical Writing. Introduction. Ethics concerns human moral values. It consists of rules, principles, precepts, and obligations guiding human actions. In philosophy, ethics is the normative study of such moral principles and the provisions of a rational basis on which they can be justified or proven inadequate. Research ethics, however, concerns principles, obligations, and rules that ought to guide a researcher's attitude and actions while carrying out his or her research or writing. Research ethics consists of obligations a researcher owes to himself or herself, his fellow researchers, and his or her audience or public at large. Although various principles have particular guidelines that guide its research by ensuring the researcher fulfills some obligation to himself or herself and society, there are some generally accepted ethical principles of research that any researcher is expected to adhere to. In this lecture, we shall examine some of the principles and guidelines, particularly as it applies to philosophy. These include authorship, plagiarism, publishing, beneficence, and criticism. Objective. The objective of this lecture are to examine some principles guiding research, to see how they relate to philosophical writing. Research ethics as it concerns authorship. Authorship is the process of deciding the names to include in a research paper as well as those to credit. In many cases, research evolves from collaboration and assistance between experts and colleagues. Some of these assistance will require acknowledgement and some will require joint authorship. Authorship also concerns whose name comes first, that is, who should be the main author and the co-author. This is not a point decided by seniority, as is often done conventionally, but unethically. Responsible authorship practices are an important part of research. Despite its vital role, authorship can be a difficult area for many researchers who frequently run into difficulty when deciding which colleagues should be listed as authors or co-authors and which colleagues should instead receive acknowledgement. Despite the challenges, researchers should familiarize themselves with proper authorship practices in order to protect their works and ideas while also preventing research fraud. As an ethical principle guiding authorship, it is a matter of duty that each person listed as an author should have significant contribution to both the research and writing. In addition, all listed authors must be prepared to accept full responsibility for the content of the research article. The issue of who serves as main author ought to be decided on the basis of the initiator of the research, the developer of the main idea, and the amount of contribution made to the work. Research ethics as it concerns publishing. Publishing is an integral part of research and writing. To make a research public, publishing is the means by which it is done. In fact, because publishing is an important part of research, it is also an important factor in the career of a scholar. Scholars use publications as one means of determining the capability and performance of a researcher. Successful publications of research in a respected journal or book provides at least some evidence that the work has withstood review by the scientific community. Such evidence clearly enhances the researcher's employability rank, and salary. In fact, some universities will terminate the appointment of a lecturer if they have not published a reasonable amount during the first few years of their employment. These realities of academic life place pressure on researchers to publish. Although the pressure is not undue, some tend to exaggerate the intensity of this pressure, and ethical problems may result. One of such issues concerns simultaneous submission. This concerns multiple publication of the same article. For example, ethical violations occur if you conduct a survey, write an article reporting the study, and then publish the same article in two different professional journals at the same time. In fact, the rule of thumb that is usually employed does not even permit submitting the same article to two different journals at once. This view holds that you submit the article to one journal, and if it is rejected, you are then free to submit it for review by another journal. Many journals include this requirement in their editorial policies. Research ethics as it concerns plagiarism. Plagiarism is the act of passing off someone else's ideas, thoughts, pictures, theories, words, or stories as your own without due acknowledgement by means of references. If a researcher plagiarizes the work of others, they are bringing into question the integrity, ethics, and trustworthiness of the sum total of his or her research. In addition, plagiarism, which is both an illegal act and is punishable, is considered to be on the same level as stealing from the author that which he or she originally created. Plagiarism takes many forms. One end of the spectrum are people who intentionally take a passage word for word, but put it in their own words and do not properly credit the original author. The other end consists of unintentional, paraphrased, and fragmented text a writer has pieced together from several works without properly citing the original sources. No parts of the spectrum of potential plagiaristic acts are tolerated by the research community, and research manuscripts will be rejected by publishers if they contain any of plagiarism, including unintentional plagiarism. To avoid plagiarism, a researcher ought to adhere to the following rules as enlisted in the Northwestern University website. Cite all ideas and information that is not your own and or is not common knowledge. Always use quotation marks if you are using someone else's work at the beginning of a paraphrase section. Show that what comes next is someone else's original idea. At the end of the paraphrase section, place the proper citation. Beneficence as a research ethics. Beneficence has to do with the ethical principle of consequentialism. That is, it has to do with ensuring that a research procures some good for others and prevents harm. Beneficence in some situations may be taken to the extreme as paternalism. A paternalistic approach indicates the denial of autonomy and freedom of choice. For example, the researcher may want to study the problem of violence among elderly women, but may decide not to include them because they may be too vulnerable. In this case, the researcher is not giving elderly women the opportunity to decide for themselves, as well as for their experiences to be heard. Beneficence therefore implies that it is the duty of a researcher to present his or her research in a manner that, although truth-seeking remains the goal, it does more good than harm to the audience. For what is good is a research if it does no good to anyone. Every researcher is thus saddled with the responsibility of weighing the consequences of his or her research result. Research ethics as it concerns criticism. Criticism of ideas takes a focal point in philosophical research. In fact, it is the crux of philosophy. However, in criticizing ideas, beliefs, knowledge, claims, and thought systems, one must take care not to cross the line of scholarship. It is very easy to quickly deviate from the object of criticisms to the author or writer of the book being criticized without necessary care. The moment one leaves the idea being criticized and focuses on the writer of the idea, he or she is going against every value of research and writing. No wonder why it is even fallacious to do so. The fallacy of argumentum ad hominem, that is, arguments against the man, shows that it is unethical to prove an argument wrong by arguing against its author. If, for instance, a scholar criticizes a Muslim scholar for arguing for the plausibility of the Islamic law by focusing on the faith and belief of Muslim scholar rather than the incoherence or otherwise of the argument is misplaced. Admittedly, there are always some elements of bias in research. Besides, we all philosophize from a milieu. However, if one's subjectivity or influences affect the quality of his or her research, it is better to logically present such issues with the research rather than querying the author. Summary. The foregoing clearly shows that the value of a research depends on the ability of the author to adhere to some ethical principles guiding research. A researcher must be able to adhere to the principles guiding the scholarship, plagiarism, publishing, beneficence, and criticism. This will ensure a level of objectivity, integrity, honesty, openness, and fair play in research and writing. In this regard, a researcher owes a number of obligations to himself, herself, his or her colleagues, and the general public. Research ethics help to achieve such obligations. This is the end of study session 10. This is the end of the lecture series. Thanks for listening.